Josh Hasten, International Spokesperson for Gush Etzion Regional Council. Shalom.
Shalom, Yoni. Thanks for having me.
So we're seeing that councils in Judea and Samaria are talking today about a silent freeze also in Gush Etzion. What is that all about?
Yeah, a campaign was launched by the heads of Judea and Samaria because the subcommittee for building within the civil administration, which is in charge of approvals of building, has not met since January. So you're talking about new projects which are slated to be constructed both in Gush Etzion and throughout Judea and Samaria, and they're not even having a discussion on whether or not they're going to approve or not approve those buildings. So it's essentially a silent freeze. The government isn't coming out and claiming, like they did back in the Obama administration, that they're going to freeze building in Judea and Samaria for a certain time.
That's why you're calling it the silence.
Exactly, because it's not official, but that being said, the current government will not allow that committee to meet. And if that committee does not meet, we cannot meet the demands, and there are great demands for building in Gush Etzion, throughout Judea and Samaria. And really all of Israel right now is facing a housing crisis. So why not let the committee meet, approve new projects, and allow people to have a future? And the next generation of residents of our areas should be able to live and thrive and grow and prosper in our areas. And that's not happening right now because of this de facto or a silent freeze which is taking place.
And the reason is the American pressure?
Either the American pressure or the government position. You know, the very wide coalition which you have right now in the government does have members of Meretz, does have members of the Ram party. So perhaps there is some internal pressure not to go ahead with building throughout Judea and Samaria. So we're seeing the effects of that right now, unfortunately now and down the road. We're talking about 5-10 years from now when these projects which are supposed to be approved actually come into fruition and the buildings go up themselves, and they won't be going up now unless this committee meets and these projects are approved. So it's a major problem right now. It's something we're focused on and very, very concerned about right now.
And another big challenge that is concerning you is the takeover of lands by Palestinians, Arabs. What are we saying? What lands are we talking about?
So we're talking about, first of all, people should understand this is Area C. Area C is under full Israeli control. Okay, and you have illegal squatting taking place throughout Gush Etzion and throughout Judea and Samaria. And so we're once again calling on the civil administration to enforce the law, which states that Arabs must have approval, Jews must have approval, Arabs must have approval to build in Area C, which is under Israeli control. So what essentially is happening right now is what they're trying to do is essentially implement the Fayad plan of 2009, which you can look it up online. It calls for the takeover of strategic swaths of land throughout Judea and Samaria, Gush Etzion.
So it's a strategy. It's
absolutely.
Not just people wanting to live in areas.
No,
it's a strategy.
It's strategy from top down, from the Palestinian Authority down. They have people come, take over areas of land, and the goal is that one day if Israel and the PA will return to negotiations, they will say, well, Arabs are already living in these certain areas, so might as well include them as part of a future, God forbid, Palestinian state. That's the goal. And they start by building schools, and they start by building other structures which would make Israel look terrible if the Israeli government or the IDF went in and tore down these buildings.
And it's important to note that we all know what would happen if Jews would try to build unofficially or, against what the different regulations say.
Of course. I mean, in the Tiv Havat neighborhood in Gush Etzion several years ago, they took down 15 buildings which were questionable. You had families who were willing to cut off rooms of their own homes in order to be in full government compliance, even though the area, we believe, that was on state land, and they redrew the lines, the so-called blue lines of the community. But nevertheless, it is happening all over the place, and Gush Etzion is no exception, and it's a real problem right now, the illegal building going up, taking over Israeli state lands.
Okay, we talked about the challenges. Let's talk now about the opportunities. Gush Etzion, despite everything, is flourishing.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we definitely want to focus on all the amazing things happening in Gush Etzion. You're talking about, if you include all the different communities and you include Efrat and you include Beitar Elite, which are not under our jurisdiction from a municipality perspective, there are 100,000 residents in Gush Etzion. You do have projects which were approved in the past, which are bearing fruit right now. There's building going on in western Gush Etzion and eastern Gush Etzion. Tourism is exploding. We had literally tens of thousands of people over the holiday of Passover visiting us in Gush Etzion to the tourist attractions, the historic sites, the Mayanot, in English it's the springs, the natural springs, throughout Gush Etzion, that literally tens of thousands of people. You go out any day, and I ride my bike a lot through the hills of the Gush. You see people on ATV rides, which from several local companies. You see people at the restaurants. The restaurants are delicious, and the restaurants are packed with people who are now visiting. Thank God in this, hopefully, this post-COVID-19 era, people have come back to the Gush en masse, and it's so great to see. So I recommend that anyone out there who hasn't been to Gush Etzion, you're just about 30 minutes away from Jerusalem. Without traffic, you can actually get there in about 15, 20 minutes, and come check out one of the most beautiful areas in all of Israel. The views, I can't describe them. You can see them perhaps in the backgrounds here, just some of the views, but you have to come see it for yourself.
And as we're talking about Gush Etzion, and Gush Etzion is going to be part of the Jerusalem conference, the Arutz Sheva conference in New York.
Yes.
And as we walk through Gush Etzion, you can hear English almost everywhere. What is the secret? Why are so many Anglo immigrants coming to Gush Etzion?
I think there are a lot of factors. I mean, number one, we're close to Jerusalem, so it's convenient for those who work in Jerusalem. There are people who come for the weather, for example. We have nice cold winters, so if you're from places like Boston or New York or Cleveland, you could actually experience, we had snow this past winter. We had almost a foot of snow in Gush Etzion, so you can feel 4 seasons more or less. Unlike other parts of the country, which tend to be kind of humid in the summer, you still get a cool summer breeze in the evening. So you have weather, you have proximity to Jerusalem. You also have ideology. I mean, you really feel a connection to the land in Gush Etzion. And just walking around, I'll mention again, I ride my bike. I ride my bike on something called the Path of the Patriarchs. This is the actual area where Jews came to Jerusalem 3 times a year on pilgrimage. They took this road. You can see ancient ritual baths, mikvaot, right alongside the road. So there's a real connection to the land. It's a great place to raise your family. If you want them, your
and
kids.
And the communal feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want kids to feel connection to the land. I lived in Jerusalem. I had that there. But it really, really is an unbelievable experience to raise the next generation on the land of Gush Etzion and really get a feel for ancient history, modern history, and all the beauty which Gush Etzion has to offer.
Okay, Josh Hasten, international spokesperson for the Gush Etzion Regional Council. Thank you very much. We'll see you at the Jerusalem conference.
Looking forward, Yoni.